welcome everyone to the inaugural, the installational, the launching of the Mobile Home Park Exchange. I'm your host, Frank Rizzo. Sitting next to me is my co-host, my partner, Eric Busito. We are running and we're launching the Mobile Home Park Exchange because we've been owner, operators, investors in the space. I mean, I've been involved for probably the better part of 12 years. Eric and I have been partners for probably about 8 years now. And we deal exclusively in the manufactured housing space. And we've come across multiple people, whether they're people looking to get involved in the space or owners in the space, and they have questions. And hopefully we have some answers. And in having these conversations with you, maybe they flush out some questions and answers for ourselves. So we're looking at the MHP Exchange as what we're calling it, an exchange of ideas, an exchange of information, and hopefully we can all get a little bit better by sharing that information together. So I want to introduce my co-host, Eric Busito.
Thank you very much, Frank. That was very well put together. For many of you that don't know this about me, I have zero social media, and you probably haven't seen me out there anywhere. Maybe on my wife's page, but other than that, you haven't found me anywhere. So this is a kind of a big deal for me to, come out and get involved here. The Mobile Home Park Exchange, we thought it was a good idea because when we started in this business, there was nowhere to go for information. I don't want to say we had a very tough time, but things that we thought we knew, we did not know. We did what most people would do if they got involved in purchasing a mobile home park, who thought they were experienced in real estate and they were able to, have all the answers here. We had no answers. So we learned a lot along the way, and we wanted to share a lot of that with you. My background has been mortgages and real estate for, 22 years now. I really like the manufactured housing community space. We've been doing very well with it. We've, purchased and sold 17 communities now, Frank?
Actually, Eric, we've owned and operated over 18 communities.
So many communities that I don't even know how many there are.
And really over 1,600 lots at this point that we've been involved with. So I think that, that's given us a vantage point of seeing, from value add and park-owned homes, from wells and septics, paved roads, dirt roads. Basically
seen it all at this point.
And we're still learning, right? And we're still learning. But one thing, and you said something so key because, I've been in real estate now, and you think about how much time, right? My first experience in real estate being in the 90s. I'm in the business over 25 years. You start to realize when you get into the manufactured housing space, what kind of makes it different from other specialties in real estate. It becomes all encompassing because there's so many different verticals, right, that you have to be knowledgeable about.
Good word.
And there's so many different intricacies in the space that I think when you could be a savvy real estate investor in your own right. You could,
and there's a lot of different models that operators run, right? There's no one exact recipe for a operator. There's multiple models.
Yes. And what's happened is, we've kind of had our own model, which we came into the space with. I think we've perfected that, or have gotten that better over time, where we could smooth out the, whether it's the onboarding process or the stabilization process, and to get the communities to where we feel like they're operating at max efficiency.
Frank, why don't you tell us a story? I think it'd be interesting for people to hear about, Frank brought me to this space. But what brought you to this space? Great story. How we got there, and
that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So, I am property. I'm a real estate broker, property manager, and I've represented families and investors throughout the New York area. Originally, that's how I started my career, and I was representing one family, and really the quintessential American success story. The father was an immigrant, came to this country, with $100, but he was an entrepreneur. He owned businesses. And what he did from the 70s and 80s when his business was successful, not having a retirement plan or knowing no other thing to do, was he bought investment property. He bought multifamily buildings. He owned a 4-family. He owned a couple of 8-unit buildings. He owned a 20-unit building in New York City. So for years, everything was great. It provided for him, additional cash flow. And around 2007, 2008, when we had the Great Recession, he fell onto some hard times. His tenants fell onto hard times. And, and when I tell you great people, I mean, he was really salt of the earth. And he was like your grandfather. And unfortunately, when you fall on a hard time, you don't necessarily feel that you have to pay your grandfather back. So he's running his buildings at almost 100% occupancy, but with a 45% credit loss. So I got involved. He was facing foreclosure on a couple of different properties. So I got involved. We worked out a plan to limit some of his debt exposure, sell some non-performing properties, get the performance up on others. And by the time we got to the really the last big building, the last building is 20-unit apartment complex. He had to do a 1031, and they really needed that money to, sustain the family. That was their income stream, or their main income stream. And the family by this time had already relocated down south. This has been a multi-year process. We have the building in contract, and the family said to me, listen, you've done such a great job. We'd like for you to represent us and find something for us to invest in closer to where we're located. So I go through the gamut, making some calls, doing my research, trying to find, an asset that would work, right? That would match or beat the income that he was going to be exchanging. And the asset class that kept coming back up, right? The properties that kept coming back up as the highest yielding, the best performing assets were these mobile home parks. And I knew nothing about mobile home parks at that time, other than what I thought I knew, or connotations that I might have out there.
Where was this property, Frank?
So we were in Southeast Georgia. That we were looking at the property. The family did what most people do up north. They, retired down south because.
And you represented them from a distance, or you were on the ground?
So what I was doing my initial research here. And obviously finding some different properties that we would go down, and then I would fly down and do some inspections. And they were counting on a report from me to say, hey, we were looking at these different properties, and this is what I think would be best for you. I was acting more in a consultant role than anything else for the family. And when I found this mobile home park down in Southeast Georgia, and I said, here's the situation. It's a distressed owner. It matches up for the exchange. Here's the opportunity. Here's a game plan for you to move forward. The father, and even it took a while to convince the kids who have become friends of mine, and they were like, well, if you can, convince my father to do it, then we'll do it. So after presenting everything to the father and sitting down with them at the table, saying, look, this is why I think you should get involved in this space, he said, I'll only do it if you stay on and manage it.
Family liked you, Frank.
Family liked me. So and like I said, they were great people. But we got involved. I stayed involved. I knew nothing about managing a mobile home park at that point, and I was managing it from a distance. And
that was what, 2 or 3 years before we purchased our
that was longer. I think that was probably around 2010, 2011. Okay. We were involved in that. I was involved with that for probably about 3 years. The first year we saw our gross operating income up over 50%. We saw net operating income improve over 60%. We created some efficiencies in there. We put a program where they would, put the homes on a rent-to-own model. And what I found was that this was a business that, if done well and with a ground team there and a system in place, that you could operate without necessarily being there on site. And that sounded great, and that was something to take a look at. And then, obviously as an investor locally and having invested in real estate for a number of years, I thought it was something that maybe we should take a look at, or I should take a look at and get involved for myself. And then all of a sudden here, Sandy happened, right? And Sandy, Hurricane Sandy did something very unique in Staten Island real estate. It because we're based in Staten Island, it took about 25% in the middle of the recession where the market was horrendous, took about 25% of the available inventory off the market. So that limiting the supply actually helped the market along, right?
Helped out 100%.
It helped rental market, right? It helped the sale market. So, you end up taking the low-hanging fruit. So for the next couple of years, you kind of diverted and said, all right, let's start focusing on what's happening here. And then, you and I met just a few years after that.
I was working in the city doing mortgages, and I was doing basically refinances, and I wanted to get into the purchase market, handle more purchases, and my clients was, realtors and obviously consumers. And, I started getting out there, meeting realtors, going to mixers, going to events. And somehow, some way, I ended up in a back office of, I think, a Perkins with a projector screen.
To be fair, he actually sent people to my office to recruit my office to listen to his marketing pitch, right?
But his office
with the offer of free breakfast from Perkins. Right.
So I got this giant Perkins room, thinking that I was
huge,
going to have a whole office there, and sure enough, I got there and it was Frank Rizzo.
I had
and one guy
and one other agent.
and I had double the amount of people there to talk with him and his team, but. We clicked, and we started doing some business, just referring people back to each other. We were both, I don't want to say new in the business, but we were both starting out on our own, and we started doing some transactions and referrals here or there, and we knew a lot of the same people, and the Staten Island marketplace is a very close marketplace, and we started buying and selling one or two families, renovating them, flips.
You're right. We started doing that, but before doing that, I think we actually bought our I think both of our leases were up, and we bought our office building together.
Did we we did the hotel first or the building first?
We did the building first.
Before anything?
Before anything.
The first thing I bought with you was the office building.
Correct.
Right. So we purchased our office building together, and then we started doing different deals. Like I said, 1 and 2 families locally.
Lease option. We didn't even purchase it. We took a shell of a building in a great spot, right? And we struck a deal at that time, which we thought was which was thought to be above market, right? But we had that lease option in there. We did the work, and by the time we were done, it was it turned out to be a home run of a deal in terms of how we structured it.
Right, and then our second deal was a hotel in Pennsylvania. No, that wasn't a second deal actually. Yeah. That was our first bigger deal outside of Staten Island.
Than the office building.
Right.
Yes.
And
but before that, we would meet every week to go over deals.
Right.
Right.
Regularly, we were looking to get involved in something bigger and something scalable. And Frank came to me and he's like, "Hey, how would you like to buy a mobile home park?" And that's how it started. And it was in Jacksonville, Alabama. It was our first property, 31 units. Couple acre property close to a college town. It was looking back at it now, it was the ideal starter property in this space. I don't want to say we went about it all wrong, but we learned a lot from that property, hiring a third-party management company to help us from a distance. And what we learned was that you really needed to be involved yourself in order to be successful in the manufactured housing community space. The brokers or the management company that we dealt with, they actually fired us because their performance was terrible.
Well, we were on them so much, right? We had expectations, and knowing what we know about the business ourselves, we expected a certain level of performance and tracking and data and results. And when we would ask those questions and have those meetings on a regular basis, I think it became too much because our expectations, our goals, and our measurables were different than theirs. Correct. Right. And I think that was a big key in that, right? And meanwhile, the funny thing is, we did that. We hired the third-party manager, having known that I managed the community by myself before, but we almost got more cautious, right? When we said, well, maybe what I did before was too easy. Maybe that was a unique situation. Maybe we've got to hire somebody locally who knows the market better, who might have a better grasp on it. Maybe.
And the one thing I'll tell you about that is that as much research and homework as you do going into a property like that, you're never fully ready, because as soon as you own it, things pop up that you didn't even think of, right? And we didn't have anyone really to call or talk to or ask questions about. We learned a lot from that property. We did well with that property.
But we yes. But what we did do, we developed some relationships with that other owners in town, like one of the Chuck, who right. So one of the things we found in this community, right, in the manufactured housing community, in the mobile home park community, we found that when you talk to other community owners, right, once they know what your intentions are, they were willing to share some ideas and give you some insight.
But no one gave us the secret sauce, right? I mean, were they able to answer some questions here or there? In the beginning, there was no one divulging the secret sauce, especially not to you.
Well, I would say where the mistake, right? Not only say the mistake, but the there's brokers in the space, right? And you think that they're, sometimes they have the purveyors of knowledge. And I'm a real estate broker, right? So I'm going to say that so sometimes you think that they know more than what they do. But until you're in the operational nitty-gritty, if they're not doing that, if they don't necessarily own, if they don't operate, they're missing out on a lot of those pieces of the puzzle that you're going to need to know when you're down in there, right? And what we did, right? Now, so here we have that community. We had certain expectations, right? And we knew going in we were going to have to kind of transition out of some of those residents, which was part of the process. But we weren't getting traction in getting new people in. And
I'll tell you a quick story, and this is the turning point, right? So the turning point was, and how many months did we have that property management company before we
we hired them in July. In January, they sent me a letter saying, because we had a contract with them, they sent us a letter in January saying that they no longer wish to represent us.
We went down to probably about 30% occupancy with this property management company. They were about 15 minutes down the road. We're thinking they're showing homes. What they were doing is basically having people come out there, grab a key from them, go over there. If they liked it, great.
Didn't they just moved on?
They moved on. And what we did is, one weekend we rolled up our sleeves, we got in the car, we posted on Facebook, we posted on Craigslist, all these, websites that we were able to post looking for tenants. We drove down there, we answered calls on the way down there, 16-hour car ride.
Correct.
And we scheduled appointments.
Correct.
And we actually left there that weekend with about 5 new tenants.
Did that almost every other weekend for the next 3 months to get that community at 70 to 80% occupancy before we kind of stopped going as aggressively as we were going. Right. So, and you know what the big key on all that was? Right. What was the big key that you got? What was the difference between you and I talking to somebody who needed, the most, the most basic of need? They needed a house, right? They were in the market. We were affordable. We were priced right. What was the biggest determining factor between them choosing us or choosing somewhere else?
Well, I think it was us, and I think when people live in a manufactured housing community, they live in a community, and they're not only concerned about the unit that they're living in. They're concerned around their surroundings. They're concerned about others living in the community, right? We spend a lot of time making sure that we are always enhancing our communities as much as we possibly can. We made people feel comfortable. I mean, that was the big takeaway there in what we were trying to get accomplished there. We had people buy in. And that was basically it.
That's 100% what it was. It was, we would tell people we're not local, but we're hands-on, right? And they felt that attachment to the community through us. And then you saw traction start to begin, that you saw traction starting to begin. But I want to thank everybody for listening to our inaugural episode. The mobile home exchange, I mean, the key to this is exchanging information, bringing up topics that's important for mobile home park owners, for mobile home park, new entrants into that are looking to be community owners or be part of this, great industry. So this is the exchange where you can get that information. If you have questions, if you have comments, send us a comment in the box. Let us know what they are. Reach out, and we'd love to answer that. Again, I'm your host, Frank Rizzo. This is my co-host, Eric Busatel, and we look forward to next time where you can get more information from the Mobile Home Park Exchange.